Well, friends, good evening. I am Micah McCall Nicholson. I am your program associate for Quaker engagement here at FCNL, and I have the honor of bringing you this month's June Quaker Changemakers event, Faith in Our Communities, Violence Interrupters at Work. I have the honor of speaking with Pastor Frederick Lamarr this evening and Ashley Myers. And this event is in honor of and to bring attention to National Gun Violence Prevention Month, which is June of every year. We also had the honor of welcoming some intergenerational panelists at Friends Place, another one of our FCNL organizations last week. But this week we get to hear about how faith is leading folks to do this work. So before we get into this conversation, I, encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat as my colleague Lindsay Bensick has sent, and also I will pass it over to her to do some tech introductions.
Good evening, friends. I'm Lindsay Bensick. I'm the administrative assistant for our governance, community, and culture team here at FCNL, and I will be helping out with technology for our event tonight. So I have a few tech considerations before we get started. First, please say hello in the chat. You are invited to share your name, pronouns, location, and a land acknowledgement, and I will provide a resource to find that. We're, like Micah said, so glad that you're here tonight. As you can see, we are recording this evening's speaker portions, but the audience will not be included in the recording for privacy reasons. Even so, feel free to turn off your video if you are uncomfortable keeping it on. Captioning is available automatically. So if you do not want to see the captions, you can click More in the Zoom toolbar, go to Captions, and then click Hide Subtitles. We'll have some time for y'all to ask questions towards the end of the event, and we'll do our best to address as many questions as we have time for, but likely will not get to all of them, unfortunately. So please submit your questions in the chat and include your name, location, as well as your meeting or church affiliation if you have one, and we will direct them to the panelists for follow-up. And if you are in need of any Zoom tech support tonight, please private chat me in Zoom's chat bar, or you can email me at lbensick@fcnl.org. Thank you again. I'll pass it back to you, Micah.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, and thank you again to this wonderful technology that we have that's allowing us all to gather this evening. So before we begin, I encourage and invite you all to join me in a moment of silence, just as we're thinking about this work and holding those lives that have been lost. Let us join in a moment of silence and hold them in the light. Thank you, friends. So this program this evening, Faith in Our Communities, Violence Interrupters at Work, is talking about violence interruption programs. So we use the word violence interrupters alongside community violence interventions. So I wanted to clarify these two before we get into this wonderful discussion. So community violence intervention, or CVI programs, focus on individuals most at risk of being a victim of or committing an act of gun violence. They provide a public health approach to gun violence prevention, addressing the unique needs of communities where systemic racism, disinvestment, and trauma occur. So CVIs as an umbrella, violence interrupters fall within that, and there are specific programs within those CVI programs that focus on reducing homicides and shootings by establishing relationships with people at the center of gun violence. So this usually looks like working directly with communities through outreach and the use of credible messengers who work directly with individuals involved and at risk of that gun violence. So studies by Johns Hopkins have shown that these programs reduce homicides by 32%. This was data taken from Baltimore, Maryland over a 4-year period. This is some of the data that was included in the white paper recently released by, and Zoom blurring, recently released by FCNL staff. But as we know, this data only shares half the story about this work. So I'm very excited to introduce our 2 speakers formally, who know how to speak on the life-saving and the faith-based approach to this work. So our first speaker for this evening is Reverend Frederick Lamarr, a devoted husband and father and a lifelong resident of Columbus, Ohio. After receiving a bachelor's in arts in ministry from Columbus Business University, now Columbus State, he obtained a master's in biblical counseling from Master Graduate School of Divinity in Evansville, Indiana. In 1997, he joined Family Missionary Baptist Church in his hometown of Columbus, where he continues to serve as their senior pastor. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Reaching Higher Heights Care Center and co-founder of Ministries for Movement. He leads purposeful activation of street organizing, specializing in gang violence and acclimating broken spirits through devoted church and community connections. He's a passionate writer of various books and pamphlets and the host of Columbus talk show, Pulse of the City. We are so grateful to have you here, Pastor Lamarr, and I'm excited for this conversation. Our second speaker, as you can see on the screen, is Ashley Meyer, who resides in Denver, Colorado, and was a previous FCNL advocacy teams member. Ashley has previously worked in local nonprofit organizations as an advocate and case manager for survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. She now works in an administrative role for Voluntad, a Denver-based nonprofit that provides direct services to survivors of both labor and sex trafficking across Colorado. Ashley has been an active FCNL Spring Lobby Weekend attendee for the past 8 years and has led multiple delegations along the way. Last month, she completed 10 months of serving as an advocacy corps organizer, working in her Colorado community to build support for safer communities and funding for these violence interrupter programs. Born and raised in Colorado, she loves hiking, camping, gardening, and spending time in the great outdoors. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So I'm so grateful to be in conversation with the 2 of you about the importance of this violence interruption work. So our first question to start this wonderful evening is, let's just start at the basics. What are violence interruption programs and how do they work? To get us started in this conversation, Reverend Lamarr, could you describe what these programs are and what they mean to your community?
Yes, thank you, Micah. Violence interrupters is those programs designed to prevent violence before it happens. In our community, there's been a lot of gun violence, homicides, and so we get people who are credible messengers to join together. And we started off with a program, but our program now is called Ministries for Movement. We evolved, but it's called Ministry for Movement. And we've come together and we've got interrupters that go into the communities, credible messengers that go into the community, and they talk to people and get them to come. We mediate to kind of prevent the violence and give them alternatives to doing things that's violently. There's all kind of organizations here in the city of Columbus that's under the mayor's direction that's doing it. You have with the Urban League, you have under the direction of Stephanie Hightower, you got New Directions, Community for New Direction under John Dawson, you got End the Violence under Sean Stevenson, and all of these operate under the mayor's Office of Violent Prevention under the Rena Shack. So all of these throughout the city, we've got credible messengers that go out and they prevent violence before it happens. And so that's what interrupters do, and it's violent prevention. Is that same thing that's happening with you, Ashley?
Yeah, very similar work being done. I just spent the last 10 months advocating for federal funding for these programs, but I kind of want to take this time to just talk a little bit about the programs that are already existing and being implemented in Colorado. So we have the first was the Center for the Study and Prevention of Violence at the University of Colorado Boulder. And they're founded in 1992. They're an academic community collaboration funded by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Their Youth Violence Prevention Center, created in 2011, collaborates with schools and communities to provide tailored supports using inclusive methods and strategies. We have the Denver Health At-Risk and Mentoring program, which is a hospital-based violence intervention program that also partners with gang rescue and support projects and provides a variety of hospital and community-based services to patients. They also work with the University of Colorado Hospital and the Children's Hospital of Colorado. Hospital-based services include mentorship, mental health and substance use services, family support, and assistance with medical follow-up needs. And then the community-based services include education, job training programs, life skills training, tattoo removal, financial assistance, legal support, and access to recreational activities and support groups. Then we have the Denver Dream Center, and they offer resources and wraparound services to address the immediate and long-term needs of individuals experiencing homelessness, hunger, poverty, addiction, abuse, etc. And I mentioned them specifically because they're actually working on my city block where I work, which is a major crime hotspot in Denver. Then there's Youth Violence Prevention Action Table, created in 2018. They also develop a public health approach to youth violence and prevention and a set of strategies outlined in reports and plans that are released to the public. Denver Task Force to Reimagine Policing and Public Safety. They are created in response to the murder of George Floyd in 2020. They develop comprehensive community-based approaches to policing and public safety. And then finally, just this last month, Mayor Mike Johnson announced the creation of the Office of Neighborhood Safety to oversee violence prevention strategies that don't involve law enforcement. So he's going to move $11 million and 65 full-time employees from the Department of Public Safety, which oversees police, fire and sheriff departments, and move it to the Office of Social Equity and Innovation to create this new Office of Neighborhood Safety. So yeah, that's kind of what's been going on in Colorado.
That's wonderful. There's seems to be so many programs that are already up and running to do this work. Pastor Lamarr, though, I want to actually volley it back to you to hear about what these CVI programs really look like within your community. What is the work that you're supporting, and how do you get involved with uplifting these CVI programs? I know you've talked about advocacy and how you can mediate conflict, but what does that really look like and feel like as you're doing this work?
Well, literally as I'm doing the work, and I personally, I get engaged in all of it because really I was supposed to be a mediator, but there's been times when, you have to transition and be a advocate. You have to go out there. So there's been many times. I'll give you an example that there was a time, and this where, well, I can give you two times, and I'm trying to do it real quickly, where a young man was running from the police. And he was running right down the side, the picture right in front of me, picture behind me, excuse me, running right down the street. That's accosted. And the police was chasing him. And he was about a block in front of the police. So ain't no way the police was going to catch him. I told the young man, stop. And I said, because, it can turn out worse than what it is. He said, and he stopped. He said, but I didn't do anything. I said, well, if you didn't do anything, don't run. Police finally caught up with him, slammed him on the ground. I said, listen, he didn't stop. You ain't got to do all of that. So I said, what did he do? So the police called the victim, which was a lady up in German Village, which was like about 3 minutes away from my church. And she came down to identify him. She said, no, that's not him. So they let him go. And I shared to the young man, I said, had you kept on running, it could have turned out worse. But just stop, because when you run is the first sign of guilt. If you haven't did anything wrong, stop and stand your ground and try to be as respectful as you possibly can. Those are situations there that we built relationships with them. So then in other situations where if something about to jump off, you know, and I tell them, so look, if you ever need anything, come to me. So you build those relationships with those individuals, and you open it up to whereas once you build relationships with them, they come to you on other situations, circumstances.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So it seems like you've been in just some of the right places, whether that's spirit-led or whether that's God leading you to do this work. How did you originally get involved in this work?
Well, I originally got involved when a young man had gotten killed. They was playing crap. They was shooting dice, and because he ended up beating everybody out their money, they thought he was cheating. They wanted to get the money back, and he's ready to leave. And you can't just beat everybody out their money and don't give them a chance to win the money back. So they got mad, ended up killing them. And as a result of them end up killing him, the family and friends came to the church and wanted me, the church, to underwrite his funeral services. And I said, we don't have the money for that. I said, but what I could do, you know, because also I'm thinking, I said, well, in as much as they came to the church, you know, you don't turn people away, you give them alternatives. So what we could do, we could have a service, and at that service, we can call the community to come together to kind of bring money together to kind of try to underwrite as much as we possibly can. So with that, I said, what we're going to do, we're going to take this particular Sunday, we're going to march in the community. And as we march in the community, we're going to ask everyone to come back to the community. As they come back to the community, we're going to share with them what are we trying to do. And from that initial march, you know, came out what we have right today. It's called Ministry for Movement. There's a whole lot of dynamics in that, but that's how it initially started. They came to us for help, and not turning them away, we gave a remedy to the situation to help them with.
Ashley, I know your introduction to this work was a little bit different than that, and some of it has been focused on FCNL's approach to this lobbying and getting involved in that side of the process on the federal level. But what led you to do this specific work with FCNL and join the AFC Corps for this specific program?
Yeah, so I actually first got involved with FCNL back in 2015. And it was through Spring Lobby Weekend. I think that year the topic was climate change, but you know, I went onto the website and I just read a little bit more about FCNL, and their FCNL's World We Seek statements just really resonated with me, and I was like, okay, let's go. It was my spring break in college, and I went there, and it really changed my life. I remember just something I always think about whenever I think back to that is just there was this banner on the podium of where the panelists are speaking for the event, and it just says the future needs an advocate, and that still sticks with me, because that's all, I think that carries through on all the issues that FCNL is working on, and recruiting others to help, and empowering them to work with their legislators on these issues. So yeah.
And so getting involved with FCNL is something that I definitely support. But how did that lead you to get involved in this gun violence prevention and violence interrupter program specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've started my career working in residential programs for survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. And I was seeing a lot in there with I was seeing a lot of what's it called? Sorry, my brain is just sorry. There's a lot of intersectionality between community violence and domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and other forms of violence. And I was seeing that play out a lot. The perpetrators of these of the domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking oftentimes don't have just one victim, and you know, really that's pretty rare for them to have one victim. And then you can see the impacts of that on the children, and see that further play out on how it impacts the community. You know, we know that children that are exposed to violence are at a higher risk of engaging in criminal behavior later in life. And it also has, you know, physical, psychological, and emotional harm impacts long term. And so, you know, these are things that that I just was seeing play out a lot in my work. And so I've been interested in FCNL's advocacy core program for a long time, and then I saw that this was going to be the particular issue for this last year, and I decided to apply. And it's been a great experience. It's been so much fun, and I've met so many incredible people along the way. So I'm very thankful for that.
Thank you so much for sharing. So when we think about community violence, as you mentioned, it's really, we see cycles of violence play out. A lot of it has to do with systemic racism and systemic harm that we see playing out within our communities. But another force that we know that works wonders and is so powerful is faith. And faith can be very personal, but also a really powerful source of connection as we organize community movements. And I've seen how entering into a space, whether it's a lobbying visit, whether it's worship on Sundays or virtual meetings like the one that we're in, can be transformed when you enter and center the spirit of that community and allow openings for connection and compassion. So, Ashley and Reverend Lamarr, I want to pose this question to you about how does your own moral grounding and understanding of faith or religious practices show up as you try to help build safer communities for yourself and your neighbors? Ashley, I want to start with you, as you have had some of this experience with the ways that Quakers approach this type of lobbying, and also the work that it takes to be a part of a social advocacy movement.
Absolutely. Yeah. So although I don't personally identify as religious, or you know, I don't practice any particular religion, but I do really resonate with the Quaker belief that, you know, God, the spirit, the light, whatever you want to call it, is within all living beings. So this is kind of my grounding force in helping me recognize that we all have an immense amount of potential and purpose as human beings. And, you know, a lot of what I do is I work to help others realize this within themselves and then also in others. So I think the community violence both stems from and creates further wounds that inhibit and distract us from reaching our full potential. It further divides us. It creates a lot of wounds that inhibit and distract us from reaching, you know, our, you know, on our personal development, and make it easier for us to engage in, you know, othering people instead of, you know, finding ways to relate to them, to collaborate and solve problems in a productive way. Healing from this kind of trauma on both an individual and community level takes an immense amount of energy and time and resources. So, you know, if we can stop the cycle of violence and prevent further incidents from happening instead of having a reactionary approach through, you know, law enforcement, the criminal justice system, incarceration, recidivism, you know, et cetera, intergenerational trauma, then one, you know, we've saved lives and prevented further trauma from occurring. Two, we've, sorry, we've not only saved taxpayer dollars, but we get to see a massive return on investment. And then, you know, we can begin the true work of healing from what has occurred up to this point as a community and as a country, and continue to create a more collaborative community space, both on a smaller scale and a larger scale. So living in safe communities allows us all to really explore and reach our full potential and work on our, our own personal development and passions. And I believe that everybody should have that chance and, be able to model that for others in return. So, yeah. How does your belief in God or the spirit or the light, as the Quakers believe, ground you in these efforts, Reverend Lamarr?
Well, and I'm gonna try to make this as simplistic as I possibly can. I don't Bible bash people, because oftentimes when they see the preacher coming, they think you're gonna Bible bash them and you're gonna make them get in church or whatnot. But what I do is share with them. I right here I got this band on. This band has the 4 colors. It got red, it got green, it got white, and it got yellow. The green is for resources. The red is for relationships. The yellow is for reviving, and then the white is for redemption. These are the 4 areas that we operate in, and I share to individuals. And as we go through our march, when we come back, we march through the neighborhood, we come back to the church. Every young man that I talked to, every young lady I talked to, I said, listen, you have a tripartite nature. That's body, soul, and spirit. But until you get those 3 parts in this proper context, you're always going to be spinning your wheels. So instead of body, soul, and spirit, it have to be spirit, soul, and body. Spirit, soul, and body, because spirit deals with God conscious, soul deals with self-conscious, and body deals with a world conscious. So when you understand what comes first is a relationship with God, because you are spirit, you have a soul, and you live in a body. So and explaining that to them, I shared to them that you have to go through a wilderness experience, and that's life. In order to get, see, Ephesians chapter 2 said we are all dead in trespasses and in sins. So your spirit man is dead because of the fact you trespass and sin. So your wilderness experience is what awakens your spirit man. So when your spirit man is awakened, then you fall into a relationship with God. Matthew 16:18, Jesus tells his disciples, who do men say that I am? And Peter stood up and said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. He said, flesh and blood has not revealed that to you, but my Father which is in heaven, which literally says there's some things you're not going to get on your own, but you have to humble yourself and humble yourself, so then God could speak to you and speak through you. So when God speaks to you, it changes your heart. So when your heart is changed, then you start beginning to operate in things and see everybody as the same. There's no color, there's no differences. All of us are the same because we all are spirit beings. So when we understand we're all spirit beings, we all are a family. We're all in this together. We're all in this together to uplift one another. So the thing that I push to the community is the fact is, we all are one family. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 16, of whom the whole family of heaven and earth is named. So we all are one family together, and we all are here to uplift each other. And I may have went a little bit too fast, but I just shared to them body, soul, and spirit, or spirit, soul, and body.
That was one of the things that when we talked for the first time, Pastor Lamarr, it just hit me right in my heart.
Yeah.
You said, understand that we are spirit.
Yeah.
Spirit, soul, and body. And that spirit, or that light, or that piece of connection that I as a Quaker hold, know that is God. And that piece of God that you mentioned, Ashley, is within every living person, every living being. And that is what connects us all and makes us that family. And that spirit that connects us all can also lead communities to transform. So, but by investing and by looking for that spirit within ourselves and within those around us, that's how we can really help transform and help heal some of the harm that has occurred.
And let me say, this band that I have on here, every young person that we talk to, we give them one of these bands and we put it on the right hand, because the right hand is always the hand of power. So you don't take it off. So as they go through the communities, if they get in a conversation with somebody and they got a band on, say, wait, we're supposed to be brothers. We're not to fight. So it gives them the sense of identity and a sense of oneness.
I love that.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up our formal conversation, as I know you both know, this work is not all positives and is not all successes. It can be really heartening and really a struggle to stand in the way and to actively interrupt violence. And I want to ask Reverend Lamarr first, what is a piece of advice that you have for people in the audience, people who may watch this program in the future, who are dealing with community violence in their own towns and cities? And also, how can they support local and national violence interrupter or community violence intervention programs?
Well, the first thing I would say, you have to be passionate about it, because it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and in the marathon, it's like a 440. It's gonna take each one of us to take a part in this. And you got to be passionate about it, because you're not going to always see the results that you want. You're going to lose some, and it can get discouraging. When you start looking for numbers, as most grants and all that require. The numbers won't always be there. You can't put it down in numbers, but the fact is, when you help somebody and somebody comes to you after 5 or 10 years later and thank you for helping them, that's reward enough. So what I would say to people, get engaged, be passionate about it. And when you get engaged, you got to meet them at the point of contact. Everybody ain't coming to the church. Everybody won't come to you. You got to go where they are, and you cannot walk in fear, whether it's going to the schools, or whether it's going to the detention center, or whether it's going to the corners, or wherever they hang out at. You just have to go to them, and you have to be consistent with it. You cannot just like oftentimes you find churches, they will come in the neighborhood, they set up a tent, and they have an outreach where they do something. It's one and done, and people don't get connected on that. People have to see a consistency, and you don't come just when you want to come, and you may come, but you come when I need you. So if you come when you want to come, you leave a number. So if you ever need me, here's a contact number. And then you have to be sincere and real about it. So if they call you, say, call me anytime. You can't say, call me anytime. They call you at a time, you got to be willing to pick up the phone and answer. And you got to be sincere in what you do. And when they see your sincerity, folks will gravitate to you. Your gift will make room for you. So just I'm saying to people, just get engaged. And if you ever go, so like, okay, you're in an area where you see like there's not that much violence or crime, then just go to a place. If you know a place where there is crime and violence, you don't just go there and think you're going to save everything. You go there and find out who's doing something. So it's like there was a time when some gentlemen from another city came to our neighborhood, and they called us and want to save our neighborhood. And I went up and talked to them. I said, excuse me, who are y'all? So we are ministries. I said, where y'all from? I said, we're from the city, Reynoldsburg. I said, okay, well, let me share something with you. You don't come in the neighborhood and call yourself doing something without first getting a pass to come in that neighborhood. So you have to know who's already doing something in the neighborhood, because it's an insult to people who's doing something in the neighborhood for you to come and think that you're going to save the neighborhood, and they've already been doing it, trying to save. So in order not to duplicate effort, you find out who's doing something, and then you join. So what can we do to help you in your efforts?
Yeah, building on movements. It's sometimes, as you said, easier to start and easier to feel that burst of energy, but these movements are about sustainable change.
Yes, exactly.
And Ashley, I know a lot of the work you do is really, really intense and really needed in this world, just like Pastor Lamarr's. And so what piece of advice would you give to the people attending the session who are either thinking about or still actively involved in community interruption or violence intervention programs?
Yeah, absolutely. So and I've had to learn this the hard way, but I think first and foremost is always, taking steps to take care of yourself, and help mitigate some of the vicarious trauma that can come up from doing this work. Community violence has many different faces, and statistically speaking, we or someone we love, someone we know has experienced this. So it's important to take time and reflect on how this has impacted us as individuals before we can really do the work and engage in it in a sustainable manner, because you know it's easy to dive in head first and then you know, get triggered or come up against a barrier, feel discouraged and get burnt out, lose steam, and then, you know, lose sight of the bigger picture. So unfortunately, progress in the world of policy moves extremely slowly, but it's important to make sure you're taking care of yourself and celebrating the small wins along the way. And then secondly, you know, research what is currently being done in your state, city, community, you know, regarding community violence interrupter programs, see how you can support their efforts, and always advocate for increased funding on all levels of government. So if there isn't anything you can find that's currently being done, bring it to them. Bring it to your elected officials on the local, state, and national levels. Bring information on programs that have been successful in other towns and cities, and then discuss how you could make that something like that happen in your community. Take the same skills that and strategies that FCNL teaches us to lobby our senators and representatives, and just use it in the same way for your local and state governments. I was reminded in a recent meeting with Senator Bennett's staff that, you know, this is an election year. And because of that, there's going to be a lot of opportunities and events to engage with your representatives on all levels, local, state, and national. So really take the time and opportunities to do that as they present themselves. And, you know, just remember that you casting your ballot is only the beginning of the work, right? Voting is always great. I always encourage people to do that, but regardless of who wins, being engaged with them and trying to continue the work, no matter who comes into office, is really important.
Thank
So
you so much, Ashley. And thank you, Pastor Lamarr, as well, for your time and for sharing not only your work, but your faith with us this evening and your time. It has been wonderful, and I want to just highlight a couple of things before we get into our question and answer section of the program this evening. So if you've been thinking of a question that you want to pose to our two wonderful speakers, I encourage you to send those in the chat. The first thing that I really want to highlight, though, is what I heard both of you mention about how this work, one, needs to be a marathon, and it needs to be on all levels of government. We see a lot of the impacts on the community level with loss of lives, with the trauma that's inflicted either vicariously or directly so. But the change really needs to happen on all levels of this system that we see causing our citizens harm. And everything is connected, as we know, that spirit flows through us all and all of our spaces. And really highlight the people that are doing the work and follow the energy and follow that love and dedication of people doing the work to heal our communities. And I also want to reference something that Pastor Lamarr said as we finish up this section. He said, and I don't even know if you know that I'm going to point this out, but you said something that said, don't look for the change, be the change. And it has to be continuous and not episodic, which is sometimes how this work can look and feel, that after we hear about a huge shooting or after we hear about some policy action that's happening, that is when people want to rally. And
Right.
sometimes that can be really influential when we really need people, but we need those friends who are doing this work day in and day out, intentionally, dedicatedly, and holding ourselves and the people we love accountable. So I see that some friends have started to ask questions. I see that Eleanor from Alternatives to Violence program has asked, how can a community establish and sustain a violence intervention program that does not rely on law enforcement?
Ask, you want to answer, let me answer it.
You go for it.
Well, here's the thing, and I could give you examples. Whereas when we first started out, with a model out of Chicago, and it was called oh God, let me see, ceasefire out of Chicago, and they had another ceasefire out of Los Angeles, and one worked directly with the police, and one didn't work with police. You have to get the credibility of the police to let them know, listen, you're in this thing seriously, but you want to work with them, but you want to work with them at a distance, because everything doesn't need a police, but there's going to come some time where you're going to need the police. You cannot have the police over your back, that you feel that you're like an informant for the police. And you're going to get that from time to time, because people are going to think, okay, well, what you're doing is for. But you have to develop a relationship with the police to let them know and understand when there is like murder cases, all things like that, you have to involve the police. But when there's situations where there's like street fight and all that stuff, some situations you don't need the police. So you have to develop a relationship with the police to let them know everything doesn't involve the police. Let me give you an example. We developed a community restorative justice. And what that is, I knocked on doors in the neighborhood and I told parents, I said, look, if we're going to change our community, we have to do it. We cannot always wait on the police to come, because when the police come, they're just going to come to take a report, or they're going to come to cover up a body that's been dead, or whatever the case is. So we have to develop that. And so young boys have BB guns and they shot out our basketball courts. And I told the other young kids, I said, I got these courts out here for y'all. If y'all let somebody destroy property I have for y'all, then y'all don't deserve nothing. Now, I'm not telling y'all to snitch, but I'm telling you, whoever tells me, get $50. But you don't tell me in front of everybody else. Here's my number. I give my number. They called me, and within 30 minutes, they called me, and I marched down to the people's house whose nephew did it, and they took responsibility. And then the auntie said, I don't have money to pay for that. I said, ma'am, I don't want you to pay for it, but I want him to pay for it. But I want him to understand. So I brought the community together, and the community took responsibility, and the community told him he had to do community service, $10 an hour, cutting grass at the church, cleaning the church and whatnot. He didn't finish the community service, but he understood he got to take responsibility. So you have to engage the police where the police need to be engaged, but everything doesn't take the police. You have to bring the community. Once the police and community come together, whether it's civic associations or whatnot, you bring the community together, just like PTAs with school, then you can make a change where it really doesn't involve the police every time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just thinking, like, just within my own organization, all the services we provide are confidential except for a few, right? So if there's child abuse or neglect, like, I'm a mandatory reporter, have to report that.
Right.
Suicidal ideation or homicidal ideation, those are things that we have to report, but we get a lot of referrals from law enforcement for our clients, but we don't have that relationship doesn't go both ways. We take what they give us and we work directly with the client and we build the trust that way. If there was any back and forth between us and law enforcement, that would break that relationship pretty quickly. So, although we don't do violence interrupter work, I can see it kind of playing out similarly in that way. And I'm just sharing that there absolutely are times when law enforcement needs to be involved, but if you can form those relationships with those individuals and those networks, and and just let the police know, like, hey, if something really big is going on, I will let you know, but otherwise we can deal with this in a preventative way. Then I think you'll garner a lot of support from all sides.
Pastor Lamarr, I am interested about this question surrounding violence intervention programs that don't involve police. And Pastor Lamarr, you were telling me about one of the summer programs that you're running this summer that doesn't involve violence interruption, but it's really about violence prevention with youth. Would you be willing to share some of that program with those in the audience tonight?
Sure. We have. Well, let me just show you another incident. I was taking some young boys, and these weren't the best. Was taking them, and I told them, I said, look, if you get in my car, you don't have no weapons, you don't have no drugs. So they got in my car, and then I was riding with them because I'm talking to them. But the police saw me pick them up off the street corner, and they thought that I'm picking them up and I'm probably doing something with them. So they pulled me over for tinted windows. Okay. And I got a license for tinted windows. So then they said, can we search the car? I said, sir, I know why you pulled me over. So then after they let me go, I pulled over, I called the sergeant, and I told the sergeant, I said, badge number, blah, 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 has pulled me over for something, y'all know what I do out here. So they got reprimanded, and then they end up telling the young boys, yeah, who that Pastor Lamarr? He called our boss on us, and they got in trouble. So they told the boys that. So the boys said, "Oh, so now Pastor Lamarr he know people over y'all." So you have to develop a relationship with the police. But we have a summer program, and our summer program goes for 8 weeks, and it's a prevention program. And we grab the kids as soon as they get out of school. They get out of school June the 3rd. We started June the 3rd, I do believe, and we go through July the 27th. Okay. We enroll approximately, I think we got roughly about 60 kids in our program. And they come to our program. Parents drop them off at 8 o'clock, and they pick them up at 3 o'clock. And we teach them, the first thing that we teach them is about playing the game of chess. Because the game of chess, if you know anything about the game of chess is a game to be critical thinkers, and sometimes I have to get on them because they don't want to play. I said, no, you're going to learn to play. And I get on the teacher. I said, no, everybody sits down and plays this game. I mean, from the 5-year-olds up to the 15, 16-year-olds, everybody got to sit down and play. But then after we play the game of chess, we go on to make sure they can read and write, and we do that in playing games like Jeopardy or something like that, and then we teach them about drugs and violence prevention. We teach them about community service. And then we bring guests in to talk to them. And then like we maybe have the police come in with we had the police come with the police dogs, the SWAT van. So then kids can see this and they see it in a different light than, just always only see them when they're in trouble. So that's a program we have, and we do that every summer to really try to impact young people as far as educationally and in violence and drug prevention.
That is amazing. And that's really focusing on not only the violence side of it, interrupting the violence, but that's when we really look at violence prevention.
Yeah.
And how these programs can really give communities alternative pathways to build safe spaces where kids can be kids and adults can be kind of like kids too, and play safely and grow their spirit and their souls and their bodies in this world. So,
and Michael, let me say this. There was a situation where 3 young men had gotten killed, and every last one of their sons came to our program. So I had to invest in those young men. I gave them jobs, summer jobs, and I gave them summer jobs really to take the time out for me to work with them and for them to say to officials downtown, how do y'all see us? just let them say, like, these boys is not bad. These boys just have a void in their life. So you have to see them in a different light.
Thank you. And thank you, Eleanor, again for that question. We will, I see Sharon has just posted another. Sharon's question is, what has been your experience with researchers studying violence prevention, and what do you wish researchers would do differently? If either of you have experience working with people collecting this data.
Well, I know when we first started out, we worked with Dr. Deanna Wilkerson of the OSU, Ohio State University, and she collected the data. I'm not a data person. I'm not a data person. I'm a hands-on because there's a whole lot of things that the data don't reveal. And I understand you have to have data for numbers. So I leave that to the data people. I keep track of people, but as far as in how many violence did we interrupt? No. How many lives did we save? I don't know. I'm just like, I just take it one day at a time, one person at a time. And I leave all that data up to people who can deal with data. I don't deal with data. I have people who deal with data. And I apologize.
Ashley, have you had any experience with how this data is either collected within your community, or how legislators respond when data about VI programs is shared in lobby visits?
Yeah, so I guess I personally do not have any experience with researchers as it relates to CVI programs, but I will say, always adding a little bit of numerical data in a lobby visit is good, maybe don't emphasize it. I think put more emphasis on your story and how this issue impacts you, or someone else that you love, or your community as a whole. But I think adding in a little bit of that data can really go to show that, what we know about these programs is there's a massive return on investment. If in the long haul, and of course you don't see that as directly as income coming in immediately, but you see that it saves money, and you can then use that money longer term in reinvesting in some of these programs, or in other things that are needed. But I think really emphasizing, especially for conservative leaning House and Senate representatives, I think emphasizing that there's a return on investment in these programs is a really great start. So yeah.
Can I just add something? Really, data can be screwed. You can change, because I'm serious, because of the fact I know what you want in the data, and I just put the data down. What you really need to do is have somebody come and show up and see the work that's being done. So if there's oversight, like I tell them any day, we've got a contract with the juvenile courts, and it's called Project Faith. And they said, okay, we need you to touch the lives of at least 15 juvenile delinquents. I said, I can touch the life of 30 juvenile delinquents, but I need you to have somebody to come so you can see firsthand what is we doing, because I can take data and I can fill data out, but if I ain't got nobody coming to see what's going on, all they're doing is looking at the data, and people can change data whatever they want to, so I think what there need to be oversight when people giving out money, they need to have somebody to come on site unannounced and see what is really going on, because oftentimes there's money given out, and because the data looks good, you say they're doing good, but people need to come out and see really what's going on. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And that's why I say, like, always emphasizing your story over the numbers is incredibly important in the in the advocacy space, legislative advocacy space, because if you can show that what we've been doing isn't working. And you can speak to that. But you can also show, like, with this, like, we are not only saving money, we are saving human lives. We are saving compounding trauma in our communities. We are saving people from being involved in the criminal justice system, and incarceration, recidivism, on and on and on. It can really paint a much bigger picture, besides just dollar signs. So yeah.
The comprehensive effects of healing can really change the world and can lead to that world we seek that FCNL works for the long term to help create.
Absolutely.
Friends, Ashley and Foster Lamarr, thank you both so much for your time and for your spirit this evening. I know I could feel it through my Zoom screen, and I hope all in attendance could as well. As we wrap up this evening, I do want to point to some resources that FCNL has to offer about this work of violence intervention and interruption programs. The first is, as I pointed out at the beginning, this white paper, rooted in restorative justice, violence interrupters increase the peace. This is a recent FCNL analysis of policy, practice, and literature released by our justice reform team and our former comms staff. This really breaks down, as it mentions, the policy and the practices and some of those statistical impacts of community violence intervention programs, and also next steps that we can take to help support these programs as funding, as we're still having to lobby and ask Congress to continue supporting these really critical programs as we look to our community. The next that I want to highlight by a fellow program assistant, Bree Tolley, just recently at the end of last month, I guess we're already at the end of this month, but at the end of May, Bree Tolley wrote and released this Breaking the Cycles of Violence that really outlines the intersection of US housing policies and community violence. She talks a lot about redlining and about how urban violence is really intrinsically connected to US policies that discriminate and disenfranchise some local communities. I would really recommend you read that. I know Lindsay Bensick has sent it in the chat for your viewing. Also, Ashley provided the US Department of Justice Office of Justice Programs. This looks at defending childhood facts about children's violence and how we can help not only learn about some of these acts of violence, but help get involved in those programs. Another resource that Ashley so graciously provided for us and for those in attendance is the National Child Traumatic Stress Network links. This is really looking at reducing the traumatic effects of some of this violence and what that can do to children within communities that have experienced that violence. Also, the final one is a specific DI program, which is called Every Town for Violence Prevention. This is actually one that I didn't look. Ashley, could you give a quick explanation of what this Every Town Violence Intervention Program is?
Yeah, so it basically just has some information about, like, you can use it to kind of get an idea of what's going on in your state, for as far as violence interruption goes. But
So it's a great resource.
I think this is more specific to gun laws, but that's very intimately connected with this issue. So it kind of shows how your state's gun law strengths are, gun violence rates, things like that. And I think that's always a good thing to kind of have in the back of your head as you start researching what's going on in your states as far as CVI programming goes.
Well, thank you for sharing the resources with folks in attendance. I encourage you all of our participants to share those with any and all in your community who are getting involved in this work and or knowledgeable, but maybe need more community support and connection. I think that's a big theme that we've heard from our two speakers about the power that comes with coming together as a community and creating the space and the movement to support this work. I want to give gratitude and appreciation to both Pastor Lamarr and Ashley for joining us for this wonderful discussion. Before we officially conclude in our last minute, I want to send some FCNL announcements in the chat that I have just shared. We have, well, I forgot to delete the first one, which is the event happening right now, but July 16th, there is a wonderful arts, advocacy, and climate justice program happening on July 16th at the Quaker Welcome Center, which is in the FCNL building that I'm sitting in right now. If you are in the DMV area and you are interested in not only art, but social advocacy and climate justice, I really encourage you to attend. And additionally, if you are someone who has been interested in getting involved with advocacy, but specifically in the way that FCNL approaches advocacy as a Quaker lobbying organization, really centering the stories of people and really centering that spirit-led connection that we can have even in sometimes frustrating lobby visits. I encourage you to attend our Intro to Advocacy with FCNL call, which will be on July 18th from 8 to 9 p.m. With that, I thank you, friends, and thank you again. I've said it multiple times, but I have tremendous gratitude for you both for the work that you have done tonight and are doing every day. Thank you for helping to build safe communities, and I hope you have a great night.
Yes,
Thank
thank you
you
so
all.
much.
All right. Thank you.